two-way relationship with them. Okay, so just a brief introduction. Like Steve said, my name is Ronalda Barrett. I'm a registered industrial psychologist, and I'm part of the Right People, Right Jobs team. And our purpose is to help organizations identify capable individuals who would perform, grow within their business. And so we would help with recruitment, individual assessments, team assessments, and help you to make effective people decisions. Okay, so like I said, our topic today is, of course, managing up. But first of all, what is it? What is managing up? Now, managing up is about intentionally building a productive relationship with your manager so that you, your manager, and the organization all succeed. It's about anticipating needs, aligning your expectations, and very importantly, communicating proactively. Yeah, so you can think of it as that sweet spot between upward communication and influence, but also building trust. Now, this, of course, always sounds straightforward when you see a definition like this in front of you, but the reality is, of course, it's often isn't. Because, for instance, we have some myths and assumptions about what it is. We sometimes, you understand it in principle, but how do you actually do it? So what I would like for us to do, so in the chat, I would like for you to say whether you believe the statement that I'm going to mention is a myth or a fact, okay? So our first myth or fact. So managing up is basically manipulation or playing politics. So what do you think? Is this a myth or a fact? Ah, we've got two myths, carrots jumping out there. First, Rihanna also myth, Linda myth. Anyone think it's a fact? Myth, yes, absolutely true. It is in fact a myth. The truth, it is a structured collaboration. In the true sense of the word, managing up focuses on those shared goals, transparency, and proactive alignment. So managing up isn't about flattery or playing office games. It's about being intentional. So understanding your manager's goals, understanding their pressures and preferences, and then aligning your work so that they get what they need and you get the support that you need. Okay. So by working with them rather than waiting or resisting, you create clarity, you create trust, and the difference is really in the intention. So manipulation benefits one person, where managing up benefits both you and your manager. So say, for example, a product manager realizes that her VP hates detailed spreadsheets but loves more crisp visuals. So she is likely just that individual that's more visual. So by changing her reporting style to favor, for instance, visuals, she can help her VP make faster decisions, and in doing so, earn that credibility. And that's not manipulation, it's that partnership. Okay. So next one, myth or fact. Speaking up is risky, so it's safer to stay silent. So how do you truly feel? Okay, is a myth or a fact? Okay. See, sometimes myth. Okay, depends on it's real, I think, yes. So fact should be myth. Okay, fact should be myth. Like this. Okay, so it is in fact a myth. The truth is that speaking up when it's done well can actually strengthen your credibility. So yes, it can feel uncomfortable to challenge or to disagree with your manager, but silence is far riskier in the long run. leaders can't fix problems they don't know about, and raising an issue early almost always creates more options than waiting until it's too late. So the key is not whether you speak up, but how and when you do it. So for instance, frame issues with solutions and not problems. So instead of saying we have a delay, say we're running late, but here are two options. And this is, and very important is then to go, okay, but this is the one I recommend. So this shows that initiative and it makes it easier for your manager to act. Okay, also the timing is important. Time it right. Don't raise big issues when your manager is rushing out the door, about to step into a board meeting, or are overloaded. You want their attention. So use scheduled one-on-ones and project check-ins whenever possible. And if it can't wait, just book a 10-minute moment when it's quieter, or send a short email with a pre-read so they're prepared for that conversation. And another thing, you can also connect it to shared goals. So anchor your message in what matters. So for example, to make sure that when we hit our Q3 KPIs, I recommend we adjust this timeline. So it shifts the conversation from my problem to our solution. Okay. So another example in this case would be if, say, a product lead says her project is slipping behind schedule. So instead of simply warning her manager that it's slipping behind, there are some issues, she can raise it early. So during, for instance, they check in, and can come prepared with two options. So say option one would be to push the entire release back by 3 weeks, or option two can be to drop one feature and ship on time with the rest. So she can explain the trade-offs between the two options and then recommend option two, for instance, linking it back to still meeting Q3 delivery targets. Okay, and say if a manager then agrees, the release would go ahead, and instead of being seen as someone who brings the problems, she can be trusted as someone who brings solutions. Okay, so our next myth or fact. My boss already knows what I need. Myth or fact? Myth, myth, myth. Yes. Okay, definitely myth. Definitely myth. So let's be honest. Would they truly know what you need? They can't see your workload, your context, your constraints. Even if they, for instance, were previously in the same role, they are not you. You are different. You have different needs and different struggles. Also, leaders are often juggling different pressures from above, pressures from across. They cannot see all the detail, the workload or constraints. And if you don't make your work visible, they may assume everything is on track and you're sorted. So, for instance, an effective strategy here is to use a 5-bullet weekly update. It is basically a brief 5-bullet email that highlights the status of the task, the projects, what risks are involved, the decisions that are needed, and also would give a pulse on the stakeholders. So giving a little sense of, okay, how are they feeling? How are they responding? And last thing in your 5-bullet update is the what next. So we'll go into a little bit detail of it later. And by doing this, for instance, you're giving your visibility without, for instance, overloading your manager with information. Okay. So, myth or fact? Your relationship with your boss is one of the strongest drivers of job success and career growth. Myth or fact? Hey, Sean with a fact. Alzan, Rihanna, yes, facts, facts. No, myth and fact. Okay, interesting. So it's, in fact, a fact. So it's one thing that we found in research consistently. It shows that the quality of your relationship with your boss or your manager is one of the strongest predictor of job satisfaction, of performance, and even promotion opportunities. So when you manage well, or manage up well, sorry, you don't just make life easy for your manager, you build trust and you prevent rework and you accelerate your own career. And this is, of course, one of the reasons why it matters. Okay, going into our next topic. So why managing up matters. We spend time and energy on it because it leads to better outcomes. So it can prevent that misalignment and rework, fewer redos, moments, less time wasted and effort. No one in today's life has time to waste. It reduces prizes and those fire drills. No one wants to put out fires on a daily basis or on a weekly basis. So then there's no last minute panic or because the risk wasn't flagged early. But it builds trust and it makes it safer for you to speak up. So your ideas and concerns can get heard instead of being buried. And it can also create visibility of your contributions. So there's that career velocity coming in. If they can see and understand what you're doing, and see the background, it's a lot better for your career and your prospects. So managing up really isn't about making your manager's life easier. It's about making your work more effective, your role less stressful, and your career more visible. Okay. So then the big question, how do we manage up? Okay. And this is where if you have ideas, if you have something that works well, please pop it into the chat. It's always nice to know what other people are doing and what works for them. Okay. So there's basically 6 core things that you can do, and you can think of it as a playbook. It's simple, it's repeatable actions that can help you manage up more effectively. You can say that your tools in your toolkit. So you won't possibly use all of them or all of them each week. You may use 1 or 2, but the more you practice, the more natural it can become. Okay, so let's start with play 1. Map your manager. So every manager, of course, has their own unique goals, pressures, and preferences. So some would, for instance, thrive on detail. Others only want that high-level headline. Some are more risk-averse. Others are speed-driven. So taking that time, mapping your manager, means you're literally learning about them and then learning how to respond to them. Okay, so what are their top goals and priorities? What pressures are they under? How do they like to receive information? And how do they like to make decisions? And if you don't know, instead of assuming, we should ask. You can, for instance, use simple alignment questions like, what's most important for me to focus on this week? Which deliverables matter most right now? How would you like me to keep you updated? So these quick conversations help you to stay aligned and prevent wasted effort and time, and ensures your energy goes into what matters. Okay. And mapping your manager, it's not guessing. You're building that playbook for how to work with them effectively. So play 2. So you can create, for instance, a working agreement with your manager. So assumptions kill productivity. And I recently saw something that's very interesting. If you look at assume, if you circle the ASS and then you circle the U and you circle the me, you make A of you and me. So never assume. A working agreement can prevent assumptions from happening by setting those clear shared expectation. doesn't need to be formal. It could be a 5-minute conversation. The point is really to agree on what is success? What does it look like? How often do I need to update you, or or we need to update each other? And what counts as that red flag? When do I need to raise it? And who decides what? What is my power, and what do I need to rather go to you towards? Okay. So for example, you might agree that if the project slips for a week, you escalate it, or that you'll send a short weekly update on Fridays. And when you have this working agreement, both sides know what gets done and knows what it looks like, knows how to communicate and when to act. That's how you stop misalignment before it stops. Okay. So play 3, communicating proactively. So communication is one of the most powerful plays in managing up, and it's in fact used in every single play. So managers don't have full visibility into your workload, like we mentioned, or your risks, or the stakeholder dynamics that you're navigating. They only know what you tell them or what others tell them about you. Okay. And proactive communication is about 4 things. Firstly, no surprise. Keep your manager in the loop before issues escalate. Second, right channel and the right time. Matching your message to their style. For instance, you can have a quick chat or send them a heads up through an email. Have a structured updates, or schedule a meeting for complex trade-offs. And a very important, don't raise big issues in passing when they're distracted. You want their attention on it. We mentioned this, you want their attention. So the first thing is, or the next thing, sorry, the first thing, use structure. One of the simplest tools is the 5-bullet weekly update, which I mentioned earlier. And lastly, the thing that sometimes we tend to think we don't have time for, or we tend to be very, just close that loop. After a decision update, you can recap in writing. Okay. So let's have a look at the 5-bullet weekly update. It's basically like a short structured email you send once a week, a 1-minute read that helps your manager stay informed. And the goal is to give that visibility, but without that overload. So in 5 quick bullets, you cover exactly what they need to do. The status, a brief update on the progress. For example, the campaign launch is on track and the content draft is completed. And then risks. So this is where basically you highlight the issues that could derail the delivery. A vendor delay may, for instance, affect the production of the video, or next is those the decision needs. This is where you need their input and sign off. For example, please approve revised budget by Thursday. Or then for the next is that stakeholder pulse, which is a quick read on how others are reacting. For instance, the sales team is supportive, but they're a bit concerned about time overlap with the product launch. And last is that what's next? So what are we focused on in the coming week? Say, I will finalize assets and prep launch checks by Friday. Okay, quick, easy. It's not long, it's not heavy, it's a sentence per bullet. And it's powerful in that it keeps your manager informed, it reduces surprises, and it makes your work visible. It also signals that you're in control, even if challenges appear. And you can really think of it as a weekly, no surprises play in your playbook. Okay, so no back and forth. It ensures that you stay aligned. So 4th play. So this is possibly the most effective and easy method to implement for managing up. It's to use a more solutions-oriented voice with your manager. So problems will come up. We know this. We live it. but how you raise them with your manager matters. So like I mentioned earlier, instead of dumping your problems on your manager, bring options and trade-offs. So give them the answer. A useful formula is to go issue, options, recommendation. Okay. Now, a practical how-to, just something to think about through the process and show, especially when you're starting out or you have to raise a tough issue that you may not even feel comfortable raising. So you can follow the sequence. So first of all, prepare, get the facts, size up that impact, and identify at least 2 viable options. Then you have to check in with the other stakeholders and any dependencies that you have, whoever is effective. What is their sentiment? What are they thinking? Okay. Next is choose your timing and the channel. So like we said, it could be regular one-on-ones, scheduling a 10 or to 15-minute check-in. But if it's urgent, then you can send that pre-read or just a message, depending on what you decide on how to communicate that urgent messages. So next is to frame it in one line. So if we take, for instance, our product lead example that I used earlier, so here it's, what's the situation? We're 2 weeks behind on feature X due to vendor delays. So next would be to offer options with their trade-offs. So option A, we push the release by 3 weeks. It protects quality, but we miss our Q3 KPI. Option B, we drop feature X, and this would allow us to meet Q3 KPI, and we can add it to the feature in Q4. Okay. So important then is to make that recommendation. I would recommend option B, protects the Q3 KPIs, and here's why. Okay. And important, link it to shared outcomes. So this keeps us on Q3 delivery target and avoids customer dissatisfaction or churn. So, and you can ask for a decision and a deadline there. So it's good to always close off right. Are you comfortable with option B? If so, I'll inform stakeholders today and update them by 4 o'clock. And remember, closing that loop, the follow-through, you can send that brief recap. This is the decision. This is what we said, next steps, and that keeps us aligned. Okay. Nice model just to think through. And it's also nice, especially if you, like I mentioned, it's a difficult conversation to have. Next is building credibility through reliability. And it's such an underrated play. So credibility is not built in one big moment, of course. It's earned through small, consistent actions. So when you consistently deliver on your promises, give crisp updates and follow through, you'll build what I call influence credit. Okay, so over time, that credit means your manager trusts you. They would like listen more closely and give you more freedom. And of course, if you consider the opposite of credibility through reliability, it's over-promising or under-delivering. Can quickly erode trust. So don't try to impress with big commitments. Impress by being reliable. Reliability may not sound flashy or be the all-out thing, but it's the foundation of upward influence. It's what gives you that license to, which is our next play, dissent or suggest change later on. Okay, so play 6. Last and final one. So practice respectful dissent and setting boundaries. So managing up doesn't mean saying yes to everything. In fact, one of the most valuable ways to build trust is pushing back, and respectfully, of course, and constructively. It's really not about being oppositional. It's about showing that you care enough about the work, about the outcome, to raise a different point of view. A simple way to do this is to state your intent. make it clear, you'll focus on achieving the best outcome. Share that evidence, bring the facts, bring the data, and mention the risks that you justify as for your concern. Offer a clear proposal. Don't just agree, suggest an alternative. And for example, imagine you work in finance and your manager asks for a detailed 40-page budget analysis the same time as month end. You can, where did I? Sorry, push my wrong button. So, yeah, then you can rather just go and say, oh, unfortunately, I won't be able to do both effectively. It might impact the results. So if possible, I can focus on month end, and then next week I can focus more on the analysis. I'll give you a high level overview this week, but I would rather want to do it justice next week. Okay. So the common pitfalls and fixes, some I've already mentioned, but I did want to just pause a moment to look at them. Managing up can definitely go wrong. And looking at it, for instance, at problem dumping, simply just throwing the problems at your boss without solutions. No, bring those solutions, at least one, and give you a recommendation. Then information overload. Flooding them with information and detail, match their style. If they want headlines, give them headlines. If they want table data, give them that. Use those structures to make it easy. And then vague expectations, working hard but not on the right things. Or when the silence, or when you avoid something, it's not going to go away. Waiting until it's a bigger issue or when fire pops out, rather raise it early, use proactive communication and structured updates, and also that over-promising. No, impress with that's sustainable delivery, and saying yes to everything. Don't do it. Don't overload yourself or miss your opportunities. It's burnout for you, or putting yourself under a lot of pressure, but also it's going to wreck trust. Okay, now just the key takeaways. So managing up is a partnership, not politics. It's about aligning with your manager so both of you succeed. And then it also is about tailoring your approach to their style. Not all managers are the same. Flex your communication style, fit it to them. And also, but proactive communication, it prevents surprises. And you can use, like I said, that 5-bullet update. Then speak up with solutions can build influence. So, for instance, silence is risky. Credibility grows through when you raise issues constructively. And reliability is also that foundation. Okay, it's a foundation of credibility, and it gives you that small wins that earns trust and influence over time. And lastly, respectful dissent builds trust. Saying no with evidence and alternatives shows leadership, not resistance. Okay. So just a few things that you can focus on and you can do. So now, thank you all. So that's basically it. 31 minutes, Steve. But now we would like to hear a little bit from you, your questions, your thoughts. And like I said earlier, if you have any ways that you manage up that works for you, please tell us. We would like to hear from you.
So Ronaldo, can I start with one that came in by email this morning? This person asked for an anonymous question. The question is phrased as follows. It often seems as if I lose in a game where I was not even participating or even knew that there was a game underway. This game is called politics. Often, when I'm really into understanding a problem and the real issue at hand and working on real and tangible solutions, other team members are 3 steps ahead in the game of politics. Somehow, when their alternative and clearly flawed approach is taken, and even after the results have dramatically and clearly failed, I come out as the antagonist when trying to discuss the real solution that should be implemented. My counterparts are consistently seeing growth in the organization. How do I break this? Thank you for the question. That's an interesting one. So
Very.
there's a famous book that was written many years ago called Snakes in Suits. If anybody hasn't read it, it's really worth reading the book Snakes in Suits. It's written by two psychiatrists. I think they're based in New York. And the book is interesting because it's part textbook and part story. And it tells the story of a person's growth through a flat organization by exploiting whatever they could to get ahead at the expense of other people. So this topic that you've put on the screen here is a topic that I think is quite common. And there are not a huge group, but there is a small percentage of people who are determined to get ahead at the expense of other people. And you can't deal with them by trying to play their game. That's the first tip. You can't try to also become the politician. Some people are built to be politicians and most people aren't. So what you need to do is to try and focus everybody on the facts. So for example, when something fails, it doesn't mean that you must take delight in the failure, but you do need to point out that the tactic has failed. And the second thing is that when a tactic is taken up that is faulty, you need to make sure that everybody is aware of the tactic that you have suggested. And that needs to be clearly communicated, not just verbally, but also by email, just to make a document of what's been said. Hi, further to the meeting, I suggested that we go with the ABC method. I noticed that the company has chosen, or that you've chosen to go with the DEF reason or logic, which is great. But if it doesn't work the way you expect it to react, can we reapproach the ABC method or the DEF method? And so it documents it, it timestamps it, it puts it on paper so that everybody later on can reflect back to say, okay, yes, you did say that. Because something I've noticed in my career, which I think all of us have experienced, is when your good idea gets taken over by somebody else, and that person then sells the idea as theirs. And that can be extremely frustrating when people are not credited for the work that they've been given. So in this particular case, you need to focus on the facts. And if you can't get to the point that you're able to move from being antagonist to being a positive contributor, you then have to ultimately consider your choices of staying in the company. Because if you find yourself outside of the political or popular loop, and if you've been effectively permanently shut out, then you have to consider your options to move on. If that individual who's causing the block moves himself or herself, then that's fine. The door reopens. So you can take a long-term strategy. But the key thing is to make sure that whatever's been discussed is confirmed and documented in some form of paperwork. That's my suggestion. Ronaldo, do you have any other points to add to that?
To my mind is, of course, what was the outcome? So again, talking about that, your reliability. And then I have a saying in Afrikaans saying, die wiel sal draai. But so if you consistently show that you're reliable and credible, it will come back. It may take forever. It feels like it sometimes takes forever, but if we work at and you consistently display that what you're doing and your work is there, it helps, it's the right decisions. That's one element to it, but I'm also thinking of the how. So how do you communicate with them? How do you then express this is not the best idea? So it would depend on the style of the individual. Some people, there's a thing in our brains, we do not like feedback. We like doing things our own way. Our brains want to protect us from feedback. We see feedback as a threat. So a threat to our person. So our brain doesn't have a difference between a social and a physical threat. And if someone gives you feedback and you receive it and it's probably not constructive feedback, or you perceive it as not being constructive feedback, then you go into that protect myself, defend myself, the fight or flight mode. So my thinking is, how do you then phrase or communicate that actually this is perhaps not the best idea? Could we consider this alternative? So using positive language rather. A bad habit I have would be to say no. Even when I agree with someone, I say, oh, no, but, or you use the word but, or however. So rather say yes, and what you can consider something else is you can also do it this way around, or even through phrasing it as a question. If you know someone is a little bit is not as open to hearing your opinion or your ideas, what do you think about this? So it allows them to think for themselves and wonder, okay, what do I actually think about this? So just ways of finding a way that they actually hear you and take it in a positive light. Steve, you're looking at me and definitely the psychologist coming out.
Yeah, I think the other issue is that people often react to a situation emotionally. So if I feel that my boss is doing something which prejudices me, or they're doing something which favors somebody else, then instead of reacting calmly, we get upset. And in the process of getting upset, what happens is our adrenaline starts to pump and we stop thinking objectively. And so we say stupid stuff or we do stupid things at the moment of conflict. Now, it's very hard, especially if you feel, for example, in that question I talked about just now, it's very hard if you feel that you have consistently been overlooked over a period of time, or you have been painted into a corner. It's quite easy then to always react either aggressively or even sarcastically. So, for example, you say, oh, okay, I see we're doing this again. And that throwaway kind of comment doesn't work with anybody. It's easy to dismiss a sarcastic person. It's easy to dismiss sarcastic humor because sarcastic humor or sarcastic comments don't address the issue. So you've got to also find the right time and place. So confronting your boss in the middle of a management meeting where the other people are involved with you, that's going to be a really bad place to do it. So the trick is to catch this early and to have a private conversation with your manager to say, listen, I noticed in March we did this, in June we did this. And in both those times, I suggested alternative solutions which were ignored. I'm just trying to understand, how do I make a positive contribution to the way this team operates? And then keep quiet. That's the second tip, is people tend to want to fill silence with noise. So you've got to put your manager, and this applies in personal relationships as well, and especially in sales situations, that you've got to give people a chance to speak and to address the problem without interruption. So don't let the manager say 5 words and then you interrupt them. No, 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 no. You ask the question and you keep quiet and you listen carefully to what's being said. And you'll notice that the manager either comes across with credibility to say, hey, I didn't notice that, I didn't see that, I'm not aware of it, let me fix it. And you will get a feeling, and people are not stupid. We pick up a genuine person very quickly. Or you'll find that they fudge the issue and they kind of make it sound like you're the problem. So there's a bit of gaslighting going on. And so listen carefully to what's happening in that conversation and try not to interrupt or speak or fight. Just listen and then digest it and say, okay, thanks, that was interesting. Let me think about this. I'm going to come back to you. And then go away and reflect. A lot of arguments go pear-shaped because people get into a fight instead of a discussion. And those fights never end well, and the manager's always got the power. So even if the manager says, fine, I take your point, and the way they say it is indicative of what's going on. If the manager says, fine, I take your point, you are still going to lose that political fight. So you've got to work out a way to get that person calm, and you need to be calm, and you need to get to try to work towards an objective solution. It's a tough
No,
one. It's really a tough one, especially if it's been left for weeks or months. So the second part, the third tip is not to let these things fester. It's really important to say, hey, I just noticed my boss, my new boss, I've just joined this company, and I noticed my boss doing that. That feels a bit odd. So immediately go to the boss and say, hey, listen, hey, boss, I saw this happening. It kind of felt like this. Am I misreading this story? And the boss is then on notice. Okay, you've noticed. If they're playing games, you've already noticed it. And you address it very calmly. You just say, okay, that's interesting. Thanks, boss. I thought I saw this, but you're telling me it's not that. Okay, great. And then keep those notes for yourself. So send an email to yourself to say, 20th of January, I heard this story happening, and I asked the boss, and he told me, no, it's not happening. And just send that note to yourself and keep it. Because the earlier that you knock this nonsense on the head, the better for everybody concerned.
Like that comment, knock the nonsense on the head.
Yeah, any other questions, any other thoughts? Ingrid, you asked to share the presentation. With the greatest of pleasure. You will be getting a copy of the presentation and the recording. Gerrit, please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, Ronaldo, and thank you, Steve. A quick question when you talked about getting an agreement in place. Some people like it, some people don't. What are your thoughts about using the format of the win-win agreement that we get in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, where you clearly specify, and both people work on this, what are the desired results, the guidelines, resources, accountability, and consequences? Do you think that kind of framework can work? And then both people sign it. And then, you don't have to micromanage anymore. You don't have to supervise anymore. With the agreement then supervises. What's your take on that?
So, no, definitely highly effective teams, rated, have the book right there. It's really about, I would say, the company culture. And if it fits within that company, having a formal agreement, yes. But if the company culture, then it can always work. It can always work. But if the company culture is more informal and they tend to be more of a handshake agreement, then I would rather go for that informal conversation. The goal is just to be aligned, like you mentioned, have those clear expectations and goals. And sometimes formalizing it can feel a little bit strange in some contexts or some company environments. So rather than just have something for you, whether it's formal, great. If not, it can work as well. So what do you think, Gerrit?
I think so. What you're talking about is a principle of up and down management. And, we don't have to know all the details, but a principle is like gravity. It works everywhere for everybody, and whether you like it or not. So I think, you've identified some of the principles for us today in terms of effective upward management. So I think it can work everywhere. And the important word for me in that whole thing is, and that's the word that you used that triggered my question, is agreement. There's mutual agreement for the benefit of both people. And just another thought, you mentioned 7 Habits, and I did. I think, what do you think of this situation that seek first to understand, then to be understood? So rather than pounding your fist on the table, as Steve also said, listen without interrupting. And then once you feel understood, once the other person feels understood, they will give you space to tell your story. So I think those two can work together very nicely here.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
I think, Gerrit, the issue is the company culture. If the chief executive or the MD or the owner of the business is a person who drives that kind of agreement, and people see it at the top, then they believe it lower down. But if the senior team is seen to be running their own story and the lower managers are expected to form agreements, there's no credibility in that culture. So in principle, yes, it's good to have agreements, but there has to be an organizational agreement that this is the way we work. Then I think it works.
Thank you.
See, Alzan also made a comment. So, out of personal experience, the agreement is always the start of a corrective process, and it's not positive. The paper brings confirmation that there's no trust in the relationship. So,
Yeah,
I can definitely see that happening.
yeah, Alzan, it's a good point. I think the problem is that people leave conflict too long. So what happens the first time I'm frustrated by something, I leave it and I go, I'm frustrated, but I'll keep it to myself because it's the first time. It then happens again and I start going, oh, wait a minute, there's a pattern here. I'm seeing the same thing again. So if I don't address it for 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 3 months, by the time I get to a formal paper agreement, that is true. The trust has been lost. But if the manager, and most of the time, managers make the mistake of not listening, and this sounds a bit weird, but listening to the facial expression.
Yeah.
You know, when you're sitting in a meeting with someone and you can see that someone's going, I don't agree, or someone leans over and says something to their colleague, and you know that there's a joke or a something being said. The manager also has to deal with it at that point to say, sorry, John, comment there. What's the question that's coming up? And then, if necessary, after a meeting, to say, I got the impression that you didn't buy what we're trying to do here. And you address it immediately. Or alternatively, if you're the member of the staff who is in the meeting, and after the meeting, you go to the boss and say, listen, you told us that we're going to implement 7 habits of highly effective people. I've been here for 12 years, 5 years, whatever, and we've done 7 of these principles. And you guys, as the management team, make a noise about this for about 5 weeks, and then everything disappears and we stop doing it. So I'm happy as the employee to get stuck into 7 habits, but are we going to sustainably implement this stuff, or is it just the latest fad that's coming through the business?
Yep.
So,
Sorry, if I can just
yeah.
comment on that, and apologies, I'm in a noisy area. So
Sure.
I think, yeah, the big part for me is it's the timing of these documents. So if you're running a project and there's almost like an instruction or expectation set up front, that is different than when things are starting to go skew or you don't know how to deal with a conflict, then trying to pull a document into the conversation to manage on your behalf. So it can be effective, but the timing and how you present it is also important.
Yeah, absolutely. People leave managers, they don't leave companies. That's an old truism. And so the difficulty is that a lot of companies make the mistake of promoting an individual who is technically very good, and then they get promoted to a position of management, which requires a whole bunch of new and different skills. And so for some people, they become glorified technical workers who are trying to supervise the work of others, but they've never been to a management development course. So they just don't understand the basic techniques of management and supervision. So you're now the victim of this person because this person's been promoted. Now you're reporting to this person, and they believe that they have authority over you just because they've now been promoted to the new position. And technically, they do have authority, but they need to earn your trust. They need to earn your belief that they can manage the job. And I'm sure everybody on this call can make a list of people they've met in the past who were not really leaders of people, who were not really managers of people. And that's tough when you're working for that kind of person, because even if you form a paper agreement or a verbal agreement, you know that that person's management competency is not going to make the behavior sustainable. And that creates the difficulty for everybody in that environment. Not easy to solve short term, but long term, the organization needs to think about how it develops the management core. And so the question for employees to ask is, in the management team that we've got currently, how many days or years of management training have they participated in doing? I've noticed in a lot of our clients that there's no evidence of MBAs, MDPs, management certificates, diplomas, and so on in the management team. So it means that people have been promoted over time from a technical role to a senior role, or to a management role, but they've got no training in management or leadership. Anyway, any last questions? We should close now. I think we do normally promise a 10:45 close, so my fault. I'll blame Ronaldo later.
7 minutes long.
Any last questions? Any last thoughts? Gerrit, agree with you. It's the long game. Don't play the short game. Play the long game to get what you need in an organization. And last point from my side is also to know what you're good at. It's often the case that I know that I'm a very good, for example, psychologist or trainer or whatever I do, but I get promoted and I accept the promotion. So now I've accepted a promotion to my level of incompetence. And so I go from good worker to bad manager. And I hate the job because I realize I'm incompetent. I realize I'm not enjoying myself. But now I've got the salary and the prestige. And so I'm a bit stuck in a position. So the question is, know thyself. Know what you're good at and make sure that you're developing your career for your benefit, not because the company's decided to promote you.
Definitely, Steve. And remember from our previous workshop about what makes people effective and great at their job. Number one, self-awareness.
Yeah, absolutely.